Good morning, everyone in Dhaka, Bangladesh. We are joining you from the International Network for Outcome-Based Education, and we have a panel of great people, the core of our advisory board, and we have joined you basically in a press briefing organized by the United International University in Dhaka. That's the regional chapter of the International Network for Outcome-Based Education in Bangladesh. With this said, I'd like to just give a formal introduction to what the summit is about. And it's a virtual summit organized from August 12th to 14th. And the idea behind the summit is basically to uh, invite individuals, groups, organizations, institutions, and every concerned stakeholder of the community, country, and the world to join and be heard about what they think, believe, and do in education as an essential and indispensable means to transform lives, build communities, and shape the future for humanity. Share ideas, models, practices, and their successful initiatives or experiences in transformational education. These can be in the form of research findings, public service, extension projects, institutional development, and innovation programs. Now, we have reserved places on the InfoRobi Global Virtual Summit 2022 program for attendees to present their best practices OB work to a worldwide audience. We have more than 32,000 registered attendees, 240 speakers coming from 100 countries. And the objectives of the summit are to advance knowledge, skills, and technological tools in implementing transformational education that impact environment and impact empowerment of lifelong learners in various sectors of the community. The second is to provide an opportunity to share relevant experiences and successful practices in designing and implementing transformational education initiatives and strategies, and promote global collaboration among stakeholders of learning institutions and communities with cutting edge research. With this said, I'd like to introduce our founder, Dr. William Spady, a former sociology of education professor from Harvard University in the US. He has been the creative catalyst and a true change leader of the outcome-based education movement globally for the last 5 decades. He is the father of OBE, the one who actually coined the word outcome-based education. And I would have no hesitation to call him a Guinness man because of the number of citations that I have personally seen and my colleagues have seen, where he is cited by government agencies, by academics, by faculty all throughout the world, in all over educational systems and processes, as one of the greatest reformists in educational mindset and bringing in major change to the educational process in the world today. In UNESCO documents, we have more than 100 countries mandating outcome-based education models. And we are very fortunate to have Professor William Spady with us today, and we will be actually allowing a few of the questions from the press, if there are any, and then we'll open the floor to our experts to be giving a formal explanation of what the summit is about and a little bit about their expertise and the benefits of outcome-based education to the world education system. Now, I would go over to Professor Elias Sampa, who is an authentic OBE practitioner, a curriculum designer, a dynamic international speaker. I've seen him in so many events worldwide, a faculty trainer, a professor of educational management leadership, author, co-author of several books. He has unwavering faith in OBE as the best philosophical pathway to transforming education as an inclusive re-socialization and re-acculturation system for unleashing and realizing our full human potential in the fourth industrial revolution and beyond. And Professor Elias Sampa, you have to get in touch with him. You have to learn from him. We have spent times with him where we really understood how instruction, curriculum, teaching, learning, pedagogy, the alignment really has to happen. We'll hear more from him in a little bit. And I come to Dr. Luella Divina Gracia, an assistant professor in mathematics education at the University of Philippines, Visayas, our very sincere and committed board member of the network of outcome-based education. She is an expert in learner empowerment, in integrating the true outcomes, what countries want, into curriculum, into qualification frameworks, and strategizing pedagogy with metacognition. So I also welcome Dr. Luella today. And then we move on to Dr. Fong Mac, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the International Network for Outcome-Based Education. He is also the CEO of MAC Team, and we recognize Dr. Fong Mac's work for the last 2 decades, and we've been seeing him in the accreditation circles internationally, in the BAP Symposium, and him and even John Estelle, I believe they got awards as some of the best assessment practices in the world, and his software speaks volumes. I've myself had interaction with him on that regard, and he is the expert on our board regarding assessment and automation. So a wonderful welcome to Dr. Fong Mac as well. And Des Collier is the one who pioneered with Bill Spady outcome-based. Yes, and he started the outcome-based education training system with Delta Motors first in South Africa. He's been from about 3 decades working in outcome-based education and the true pioneer and change leader in South Africa. South Africa education system has also mandated outcome-based education. He runs a corporate communications business, a training organization. He designs and presents outcome-based training courses. He is our expert on organizational change and mitigating those limitations for organizational change to implement transformational education and true empowerment of learners. With this said, I would like to actually take up some questions from the press. And if we do not have some questions, then we will go to a formal explanation from all of the Infor-OB experts, and we would conclude at that point. So Dr. Munir, Dr. Server, do we have any questions from the press that we'd like to address today?
I didn't receive any yet. Let's wait for it.
Okay.
Till,
so while we wait for some questions, I will open the floor, and Professor William Spady will address us in this great press briefing. So, Professor William Spady, over to you, please.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I would like you to know that outcome-based education is a fundamental way of educating. We brought it onto the scene in North America 50 years ago because the education system there, and I find in the rest of the world, is really not organized around outcomes. It's organized around curriculum. It's organized around accreditation. It's organized around credentialing. And most of all, it's organized around time. Well, when you decide that you want outcomes, that is, you want learners to be able to do and accomplish things that really matter in their lives, and you let that drive the curriculum and the assessments and the credentialing and the rest of the system, it absolutely requires major change in thinking, in orientation, and in a long period of institutional inertia of education systems. So we have been in the transformational change business, you might say, for those 50 or so years. And I'm delighted that in the process of that, I have been able to travel internationally, meet these incredible people on this team, and have learned so much from them about the ways in which they feel we can bring these empowering ideas and this empowering vision for learners to the world. So I'm honored to be part of this panel. I'm honored that I will be presenting a keynote address at the summit. And I'm really delighted that you are here and willing to share our message with your colleagues around the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Spady. Now I'd like to request Dr. Fong Mak, who is the CEO of Infor OBE, and give us some understanding on how we can elevate this paradigm of OBE, especially through technology. We've been through COVID and hybrid learning is everywhere. What does the summit address in terms of this particular challenge that the world has been through? What are your key insights into this matter?
Thank you, Wazid. I think the main thing is the question most will be like, how is the landscape of learning changes at this day or age? The learning and teaching have changed in the past 2 years, particularly due to the pandemic situations. And students nowadays recognize that learning does not necessarily have to occur on one campus. They were forced to adapt to learning online and be self-motivated to stay on top of their educations. So those have to do with the university uncertainty in life, like workplace requirements and the learning environments. So it's a similar situation in the K-12 environment as well. Students are questioning the usefulness of what they're learning nowadays. Then this new wave of students are demanding the education to be more focused and pragmatic, which also help them in their future career. So on the other hand, teaching is becoming adaptive and accommodative to the individual circumstances of students. So in other words, we should look at the student holistically for the learning environment. Okay, not just a system, but individualized learning for them. On top of that, our existing technology for education and learning are not really adapted to this environment as well. So the existing learning management system, we call LMS 2.0, is not adequate because those systems are designed to facilitate teaching activity in class for teaching delivery and student assignment and everything else. But what they're lacking is they don't have the mechanism to track whether student learning are really meeting the outcomes, whether teaching is really in place aligned with the outcome that they really want to have. So maybe it's time to say goodbye to the existing LMS 2.0 and welcome the LMS 3.0, which we call the outcome assessment system. And that supposedly focus on teaching topic aligned with student outcome and ensure the right level of challenge, and also provide formative assessment to instructor with real-time feedback to implement the instruction strategies to increase student achievement and be able to track and monitor individual student learning against the intended outcomes. But most universities do not have this kind of mechanism to track whether students are meeting outcomes. So if the learning process is even geared to the design outcomes, this is what the learning industry really needs. It's what we need. Okay, so take the university to the next level educations. After focus must be on the learning outcomes. So existing learning measurement system are insufficient if the university move toward OBE. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we are looking at curriculum, and the question is, are we really empowering our learners through the models of curriculum design and development, And is instruction also aligned to learner empowerment? Are real strategies of proper learning being integrated into the learning process? So we have Professor Elias, an expert in instruction design, in curriculum development. He will let us know whether the model of content that we're focusing on, is that the future that we should be looking into? Elias, over to you, please.
Thank you very much. One of the most obvious observations that we can make with our time now is that there is an overwhelming explosion of information, ideas, and skills. You can Google in anything, Mr. Google knows it all. But at the same time, we are seeing the increasing, the growth of ignorance, if I may say so, or undesirable directions we're encountering in our communities, whether we're talking about politics, culture. We are experiencing an economy that is expanding, but at the same time contracting the number of people to participate in that economy. We are seeing more poverty growing, at the same time wealth growing. And this has created a paradox, which remains very difficult for many people to explain. But I think one of the dimensions that can be addressed in order to recalibrate all of this and let education do its work is really to rethink how we educate humans. Yes, we have tended to think about education as simply those people who are knowledgeable will come and give information to those who are less knowledgeable. And in so doing, we are caught up in a system where we recycle the past. We go backwards rather than moving forward. And we have seen that many, many people are doing many things different in life. They do so outside of the school because the school system does not allow you to create. The school system allows you to repeat what you were taught. And when it goes to assessment, you are being assessed in terms of what information, what activities you remember in class. So then when we get our credentials along that line, we get credentials, but we're not competent with those credentials. And so what outcome-based education is telling us, or at least has given us these powerful tools, is to start imagining our education with the kind of future we want, what kind of life we need. And then we try to design backwards. I call it front-loading curriculum. So we begin to design backwards. If this is what we want, how do we then recreate education to become an experience of accompanying humans, not teaching them actually, but accompanying humans towards self-transformation, so that what we do in the school system is really creating that space where people can both receive what can be received in terms of getting reactivated, but at the same time, the school focuses heavily in terms of helping a person to become their best version of themselves. And that is something that I think education hasn't done. Although all over the world, we are increasing the amount of money we are spending in our national education, but we are not doing the right thing precisely because we are leaving out, focusing on the outcomes so that we can get ourselves to the future we want, so that we can get every person where we want everybody to be. And that is a possibility. We need to dream dreams, and through recreating in our curriculum structure, as well as assessment structure, that we are able to see ourselves moving in that direction. Before we talked about assessment, much of the assessment practices we have from all the existing practices, they are designed to measure content. We assess content and activities. We are not assessing human progress, how people are developing, how people are becoming humans that they need to be. And this kind of assessment that remain constantly written in pencil. Okay, let me borrow that word from Bill. Okay, so we are focusing on getting people where they're supposed to be, rather than simply measuring how much information they got or how many activities they participated in school, how many papers they have submitted to the school, but really focusing on building human beings to become fully human. So I'm confident that's the reason I never stopped trusting. The first moment I encountered outcome-based education, I said, this is it. And it has really made a big difference in the way I teach, in the way I participate in learning, and how I interact with my students, and how I view every student as they come along in the learning system. So this is the ideas that we would like to really expand, sharing that this platform can allow us an exchange along this line to see that we do not create an education that support exclusion of people, on the basis of they can't learn, therefore they're disqualified, but creating a system that allows people to be included. And the typical simple example that I have here is really when you look back into our traditional societies where people exist as a farming community, as a fishing community, nobody drops out. That everybody succeeds to become an active and participating member of the community. But this educational system we have developed doesn't operate that way. It is really geared towards streaming out because we don't want to teach. All we want to do is to select the brightest we can. And that's quite unfortunate because we are losing so much of human potential that can help us really to become more harmonized with the environment and really becoming the very best we can if we constantly listen, not only to the environment, but to every human being who come along. So I look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elias. We hear about learner empowerment all over. It's kind of a buzzword now, but is that a facade? Is learner empowerment really happening? And are students getting the live performance roles that we're talking about? This is a key question we want to put to Luella. Luella, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you so much. I heard, very, very rich inspiration today from Wajid to Professor Spady to Mac and Professor Sampa. Thank you so much. And I really agree with all of you. In fact, I was operating on the same framework. Even before I met outcome-based education, before I met Professor Spady, I've been working on this kind of belief value already that, everything around our learners is just a matter of the tools, the operations that we try to create for them so that they can be empowered, so that they become better persons, so that they can be the best who they can be as we prepare them to, for the coming future, to which how we would like to see the future in the future. Learner empowerment, there are two things that we really have to think about. It can be in a bigger sense, in a smaller sense, and in the other one is in a micro scale of thinking. Putting into organization thinking, the principles of Dr. Spady had been very comprehensive in explaining that. There are so many principles and important essential values that we can have from the 5 C's, how to enlighten our learners, that what makes them transformational in sense, how to bring them empowerment, enablement. So everything that's begin with E aside from the O of the OBE, we have to think about. So in the bigger sense, there should be a support of the organization, of the institution, but institution cannot work on its own without even sharing it with the community, with the governance, with the people around us. Anyway, what is the purpose of preparing learners? It's for them to take our places later on. So that's the bigger sense that we have to ensure that the infrastructure, the infrastructure, everything is there organized around the curriculum, around what we want our learners to be, the outcomes that we want to target for them to achieve. Talking about environment, that's another thing. Environment and tools are also very important. We are getting closer and closer to our learners as we think of the bigger community, as we think of the bigger world, we think of how we organize things. We think as well of the environment and the possible tools, very essential tools that can empower as well our learners until such time that we have to go through into the curriculum. We oftentimes call that the blueprint, where all the learning experience that we want to happen is there. But sometimes our blueprint, even if it's good enough, but the empowerment of the leaders, of the teachers who will also be taking care of our learners are also, quite short on in terms of their readiness as well, how to empower our learners. So in other words, when I speak of empowerment of learners, we're not just thinking what are the specific strategies, how we can, at a smaller scale, in the micro scale of thinking. It's not just about thinking what strategies or techniques are we going to use to empower them, but there has to be a very, very strong support of mechanism, of system around them, so that whatever whatever is it that we want our learners to support and to empower as to whom they want to become someday, then it is there. So in other words, there must be a very clear understanding to every stakeholders of the community, or even of the nation and of the world, on how are we going to empower our learners, and what are the things that we have to give them, what are the tools and environment we have to provide for them, and what kind of organizational change are we going to have, so that we can really make sure that things will happen. So I think the most important thing that we have to think is not just about that, but what kind of value are we going to, the best value that we think our learners should need, and the kind of value that we think, the kind that will make or shape or build the community that we want to have ahead of us. So I think that's the message that outcome-based education is trying to tell. It's not just about outcomes based of the content. It's not just about the outcome case, about skills, not just about outcome-based education, about the nitty-gritty things. They are, yes, trivial, important, but the essence of who we are, our humanness, aside from our performances, our excellences, it's who we are. It's about who we are as people of this nation, of this world. I think that's the message I can give to all those who would like to be enlightened of what is really outcome-based education all about. That's it.
Thank you very much, Luella. Transformational education is the direction for learners today and for tomorrow. But are organizations, are academic institutions ready for that? Is the leadership ready for that? Are the management of systems oriented and prepared to take care of this change properly? Is there real faculty training happening? And what about student retention? These are some very key questions that we bring up in the summit. And Des Collier is an expert who will be also moderating panel in Team 2 on August 13th. We'd like to welcome Des Collier for his very insightful comments on these aspects. Over to you, Des. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajit. Greetings to everybody from Cape Town in South Africa. Indeed, I think it is essential that leaders and educators, political, economical, business, fully understand what is involved if they decide to implement transformational outcome-based education. They need to know that there are fundamental changes from paradigm through to delivery, through to the role of the educator that will need to change. It is a systemic change that is involved. From my experience in South Africa, I witnessed from the efforts to implement outcome-based education, all kinds of agendas, from the political agenda to the concerns of the business world, to the academia trying to protect their turf and their authority over who can come to university and who can't. That's why I'm so encouraged that we have so many doctors and professors who are catching onto this transformational change that is needed, because in South Africa, the universities were terrified when they heard that all learners can learn. And they envisaged that they were going to be flooded by people who couldn't solve quadratic equations and things like that, which were the criteria that were sort of set for who can come to university and who can't. So they resisted it. Academia in South Africa resisted it because they actually controlled who got matric exemption to allow them to come to university. So there were all these power struggles actually going on in the country with different agendas and so forth. So what we need is a coherent understanding from politicians all the way down to the teachers in the classrooms and the headmasters who manage the facilities. If you're going to make this change, understand what kind of change you're going to need to make. And as the leader, you're going to need to model that change. That is my main message involved here. And I'll be presenting how to develop an action plan to implement outcome-based education in your institution. How do you use your space? How do you allocate your classrooms? All that kind of thing. And in the end, ultimately designing learning centers differently. The changes, there are essentially three types of change. There's developmental change, there's transitional change, and then there is transformational change. Transformational change means you fundamentally change the way you deliver education, right from your vision and values for education through to how you use the physical space available in your institution to deliver the kind of learning that is envisaged in transformational OBE. And the key about being transformational is that it is future focused. And many people think COVID has caused this new normal that they are calling it. But the new normal has been emerging for 5 to 10 years already, driven by the fourth industrial revolution and smart technology. Developments there that now enable us to do things that we weren't able to do at scale, involving large numbers and so forth. There are, of course, that raises concerns as well. Is it all about technology? With respect, I like Luvella's angle that there's a parallel emergence in humanity that makes emotional intelligence a critical skill, and even spiritual intelligence, entering the workplace where people are looking to do meaningful, purposeful things in the light of all the challenges that the world faces now. So I strongly argue that with the technology and the humanity aspects, the time for transformational OBE has come. It's been a while in implementing, but I believe that the technology is there now to make it really possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Des, for your very important insights. I'm going to take some questions now, and we will hopefully conclude another 10 minutes. So one question, which actually is quite important, I'll bring that forward before the other one, is about the objective of Infor OBE. I'd like to address that aspect. Infor OBE was founded by Professor William Spady. It's a team of highly dedicated researchers, leaders, and educators established in order to keep the flame of authentic outcome-based education burning throughout the world for the 6th decade. That visionary flame continues to empower every learner and leader within OBE's reach to develop the skills and attributes that elevate humanity and its evolving future. A little bit about the history now. The work of the International Network for Outcome-Based Education, it formally began in January 1980 in the US with the establishment of the Network for Outcome-Based Schools and the publication of its quarterly newsletter, Outcomes. Over the next few years, the network grew from a few dozen founding members to over 2,000 educators and schools located in almost every US state and Canadian province, led by its executive director and newsletter editor, Professor William Spady. The network held a large number of state, regional, and national conferences, highlighting the latest developments and innovations in outcome-based implementation. So Dr. Spady established a technical support organization in 1991 called the High Success Network for Outcome-Based Education, or the HSN. The HSN's work was so widespread that in 1997, Dr. Spady was invited by the national government of South Africa to assist in its nationwide outcome-based curriculum implementation efforts In addition, he provided support over the next decade to a number of local and national educational improvement projects. Dr. Spady has traveled to almost every continent on earth, interacted with leaders, policymakers, stakeholders all over. And as we know now, even the national policy of education in Bangladesh has adopted outcome-based education models. So our objective is to work with all of the national organizations, policymakers, stakeholders to get the true, real outcome-based education model, the authentic paradigm to explain the real benefits and implementation mechanisms, the right technology, which would actually help implement these true models. That is the objective in 4OB, and to bring all of these experts all throughout the world together in a collaborative effort, in a research, effort to develop and grow further this great cause of educating people, educating humanity, elevating humanity, solving the problems of the world, and creating a human global family for the successful future that we're looking at. So with that said, we will come to the next question. And there are two more questions, and I think we would stop at that point. The question from uh, the one that I answered was from Rabiul Islam from the news agency Ajkar Putrika. I think Putrika means book from Sanskrit. And the question was, what is the main objective in 4OB, which I just answered. The other one is from Daily Caller Kanta from Abdul Mateen. And the question is, how can we implement outcome-based education in the remote areas of Bangladesh? And I think I would bring that question over to Bill, to Spady, if you want to highlight some practical mechanisms of how we could achieve that. The question again is, how can we implement outcome-based education in remote areas of Bangladesh? Over to Professor Spady. Your microphone is muted.
I think this goes back to some of what Fong Mat was saying, to what Des was saying about the use of technology. If the internet in some way can reach those rural areas, if people have availability to get that information, there is a ton of information that can be provided to them and guidance that can be provided to them about the strategies and about the substance of how to make this model work. Okay, many of the most advanced initiatives that happened in the United States happened in very small school districts. They were not in the big cities. They were in the places where people got together as a unified group and team with their community and shaped the focus of what they wanted and provided the resources and support for that to happen. So I'm hoping that there's going to be a capability of reaching that way. I think that has to be part of government policy. How much does it want to make this kind of work available to people, not just people in the urban centers, all right, who will naturally have more ready access. Perhaps some of my colleagues would like to also chime in on that. I know Des, I see Des's hand. I think he'd like to talk to that issue as well. Thank you.
Yes, Des, please proceed.
Indeed, I said that the implementation of OBE now is certainly ripe because of things like COVID and so on that happened, and that we now have the technology and so forth to be able to do it. However, in one of our discussions, I said it's not necessary to have all that technology. If you are teaching a class outside under a tree, which happens in Africa, you can still do outcome-based education because it's not about the technology actually. Technology is wonderful and it helps, but outcome-based education is an approach to educating people where you start with the desired outcomes. And in many ways, I did alert us also to the fact that technology has left many people behind, especially the poorer countries. And so they're saying, well, obviously this outcome-based education is only for the wealthy. It is not, it's not. That's a perception that is unfortunate. It starts with looking at the future. In other words, what do you want to be preparing your learners to do when they leave school? It's a future-focused system, which yes, is greatly assisted by having all the technology and computers and rah, but it doesn't actually need all of that. It can still be done without it. What you're doing is starting with the outcomes that you want your learners to master by the time they leave your educational institution, whether you're teaching in a high-tech classroom or whether you're teaching under a big tree in a rural village. It's an education paradigm that can be implemented with or without high tech. That is my belief anyway, because you design down from the outcomes. What do you want your learners to know, be able to do, and be like when they leave your institution with the abilities and the facilities that you have? Obviously, to prepare them to go out into the modern world equipped, that they are employable or to start their own businesses. But yeah, I think I'm trying to avoid the perception that you have to have this extremely high-tech environment in which to practice outcome-based education. It's useful, but it's not essential. Maybe I'm open to correction there.
Okay, so we have 2 more questions, and we probably try to finish in 10 minutes. So Elias, if you have something in 1 minute, then the 2 questions are also going to take time.
Yeah, just a quick addition to. I'm glad that Des has added that component. It's important to say that the modality of delivery, how you deliver, how you facilitate learning, can be done through all possibilities of technology, of hands-on. But at the end of the day, human beings learn by experience. You don't experience it, you don't do it. So we cannot assume that the experience of people in the remote areas is less legitimate towards expanding their consciousness and allowing them to dream. I think that's a false assumption. So we need to make use of the resources available as far as instruction is concerned. We need to be able to work with available resources, available experiences that is authentic, so that people grow from that experience in what we call transfer of learning. Content in class, activities in class is not what we bring to work anyway. Those things are there to help us learn. When we approach life, we continue to learn because the workplace is different from the classroom, no matter what you do. The life you go through in the classroom will be different from life in reality. But once you are trained to be transformationally thinking, to be someone who is committed to see and take opportunities and to act, I think that's the only thing that will move forward. So yeah, I think that outcome-based education, which is not very much heavy on uniformity of content, which is the current educational model. Everybody has to read the same book, everybody has to go through the same textbook, everybody has to have the same technology. What I mean, these are means. They are means, they are not the ends. What we need to share in common is the destination, and they allow the local initiatives to take place to realize that people can be there and avoid assessing people by looking in terms of the contents they cover. Or imagine I live in Manila, you'd be forcing me to learn history of Indonesia for me to pass the exam or something of that type. But if we are training people to be historically conscious, their local histories should be used to train them towards that. If we are training people to be responsible, the local context has to provide how to train to become a responsible human being. It should not be done in terms of having uniform content and you go to examine people on that uniform content. Additionally, in terms of outreach, how do we link communities together? I think that beyond the internet connections that we're experiencing, the radio and TV are really have enormous outreach. You can reach out so many people with radio, actually, and almost every person in the countryside, they can participate in radio education. If the outcomes are very clear, these resources that are supplemented through radio means and printout materials can actually equalize education. We do not want farmers to be suffering from brain drain, okay? Because the only authentic thing is to go to the city and learn that the guys in the city, we are encouraging brain drain. But if we can let them really be the new creators in their own community, they can begin to recreate, then the education will be empowering them to reach that point and realize the dreams and aspirations of their own people and their own communities. And that's why I think outcome-based education become really the right tone we need today. Thank you very much.
So we are actually running out of time a little bit. Luella, you have 3 lines. Please, if you can make it brief. And then we have
3 lines.
Two questions that are there. And actually, some of the journalists, they're actually leaving. So let us close soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for giving me the time, Wajid. In fact, just 3 lines. I would just like to, capsulate Dr. Spady, Des, and Elias' ideas. In other words, to educate in a remote area, regardless of what level it should be, there is one big opportunity, okay? The second statement is that for this opportunity, there is an opportunity to make use of OBE at this point in time. It's a very good time to come up with our conceptual framework or based on the paradigm of outcomes-based education. It's a big opportunity for our stakeholders of the community who's responsible for that education in that very remote area. And third, another opportunity for our capability builders. I would like to pick up on what Dr. Spady had said. For those who are capacitating our communities, make use of every technology, make use of every resources where you can find very good models. Those have been tested already, programs that are really responsive to the needs of the community. And that's, I think, we can address the needs of the stakeholders of communities education. That's all, the 3 lines that I would like to say.
If we will take the last question and combine it with another question, the question is, what impact will the upcoming global summit have for ensuring successful implementation in higher education? So I'll just add that, and if anyone has to add a few more points there, then we will close. The other question is kind of interlinked, is how can we achieve outcome-based education, different specializations of higher education? Now, to talk about the summit, we are arranging the summit in 3 tracks: humanities and social sciences, computing, engineering, technology, physical and medical sciences. And we cover 3 themes. The first theme is the models of learning. How do you go from principles to practice? And there are 5 areas of that. We're talking about instruction, pedagogy, assessment, accreditation, qualification frameworks. All of those are in there. Secondly, we're talking about organizational change to implement transformational education. In this, we're talking about leadership matters, management of educational systems, training of faculty. We're talking about retention and learner empowerment. These are very key and powerful aspects that we have to look into. The third is technology. It's indispensable, but then issues like artificial intelligence, machine learning, how do those impact us? What are the challenges and benefits? What about automation of quality systems, learning management systems, smart schools, learning environments, the digital divide? That's a very key challenge today. So with all these tracks, teams, even the experts that we have, bringing in global practices, best models, actual research, with all of these collaborating together, we bring a platform for nations, countries, educators, leaders, administrators to come together, to learn, to share, to study together, so that we could smoothen out and take care of the challenges that we're facing and have a real practical and beneficial implementation of outcome-based education, not just the forms, not just regulations and guidelines that we put on the framework in the institution along with the other pictures that are there, but real empowerment, real integration, and something that faculty and students can implement and benefit from. So if anyone has to add anything else to that, we'll take that and then we'll close from this. Bill, please. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to remind our press folks that we built this model around three very fundamental beliefs. One is that all students can learn and succeed, but not on the same day in the same way. And I want to add, at the same place. All right. And that Des brought that point out with regard to the work we did together in the South Africa situation. But that's the most fundamental of the three premises. They all can learn. Can we make that learning clear and compelling and motivating and relevant to the future they are going to face, rather than simply the curriculum we've always had? The second is successful learning promotes more successful learning. So what I would like to say to universities as well as all schools is they have to do their very best to get students on a successful learning track. Build the confidence as well as build the skills in what they're doing. And the third, and this is where the challenge is, okay? Consistently, as I have gone across the world at every level of education, this is the one where people say, oh, no, not us, no. The third one is that the educational institutions, okay, our thing said schools, okay, control the conditions of success. That is, they control what it means to become a successful learner, how you are going to get validated to be a successful learner, etc. The institutions control that. And as Des has said, and as Elias said, okay, education has been in the selection business, not in the success for all business. And that is where the most fundamental change has to come. It's a mindset. Our job is not to find out who's the smartest or the fastest learner. Our job is to equip all of these students who have come to us, okay, wanting to become successful and fulfilled people. It's our job to assist that to happen, okay? The big picture that shifted over time, over the 5 decades of OBE, was from focusing on high quality academic learners to realizing it had to get out the door and change people's lives and then even make a difference in the world. The graduates we send out the door are the people who will transform the world. Okay, that's the mindset I think we need to have, and that's the approach I know that all of my colleagues here on the Infor OBE advisory board, I know that's what they believe in as well. So thank you for this opportunity.
I'd like to add one last note to reiterate what you just said. The purpose of the summit is to provide opportunity and a platform for all scholars around the world to get together to explore all possibilities and ideas. What works in one country may not work in others. So that's the purpose of the summit is for. We get together, we discuss, and then you figure out what worked for you. Just like the question say, would this outcome-based education work in all type educations? Not necessarily in Bangladesh, it can be any country. Yes, it will work, but the question is how? It really depends on your culture, your economic situations, your government policy, and the support from the system. There are two parts to this. OBE not only focus on student learning, but also focus on the instructor training, so they understand what OBE really is and how it need to be taught and teaching delivery. And that's important. Technology is important, but is it a key thing? Yes, it is. But also, if the technology is not valuable, then the teacher would be the key person for conducting OBE. That's it.
Okay, maybe just to make a conclusion, I would like to say that the very best that we can get from the Global Summit is that once again, the summit is giving us a lot of knowledge, the awareness that we need to have. And so therefore we have to rethink. So that's the way I would like to give a message to all. Rethink again. With respect to what Dr. Spady and all my colleagues here are talking about, outcome-based education for the sake of the future of humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all of your time. So we've doubled up from 30 minutes to 60 minutes. So I think this is the hospitality in Bangladesh that's kind of impacting our performances here. So thank you very much to United International University, our regional chapter and sponsor for the 11 amazing webinars. And we'll be culminating with another amazing webinar from the father of OPE, Professor William Spady. I'd like to invite all institutions, organizations, national policymakers, and stakeholders to join us in the conference. Please contact the local regional chapter for further information. If you need some kind of help with the passes, or there are dignitaries that like to attend, or there's some programs you'd like to present, please do not hesitate. Time is limited. The program is almost saturated, but yes, we are still open to learn, to share. And thank you very much for joining us. And we pray for success for whole of humanity from the coming summit. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night.
Good night. Good morning.